welcome to Psychedelic Chat. My name is Wendy Marusic. I'm one of the co-founders of Open Nurses, the organization of psychedelic and entheogenic nurses. Today, it is my pleasure to interview Amy Della Rocca, MSN MPH PMHNP. She serves as clinical director at Marpa Minds, a Spravato and ketamine clinic. She also works on the medical team at Journey Clinical, a company that provides ketamine-assisted therapy. She holds a Master of Science in Nursing from Columbia and a Master of Public Health, and is board certified as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. With over 25 years in mental health care, Amy has distinguished herself as a national leader in ketamine and Spravato therapy. Her training encompasses advanced psychopharmacology, mood disorders, integrative psychiatry. She's recognized for her ability to merge evidence-based medicine with whole person approach to healing. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Amy. Hi.
Hey, good to see you, Wendy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, good to see you again. Yeah, we met at the ketamine training. Okay?
That's right. That beautiful Prati training in Colorado, the end of life training was incredible. Wow, what a
shout out to Prati. We've talked about Prati several times on this podcast, or
yes.
And yeah, so let's start out here. Talk about your nursing career. Tell us, the whole how you meandered towards. How did you get to psychedelics?
Yeah, a lot of meandering. That's a perfect word, Wendy. I studied philosophy undergrad, and I was fortunate to be in a medical family, and was, able to visit a few countries like Guatemala on medical trips, and got to watch, my dad and mom do surgery as doctor and nurse, and had a lot of exposure to healthcare. Never thought I'd be interested in healthcare. And on a trip to Guatemala, I fell in love with the country. And came back from that and really started, researching what was happening in Guatemala at the time with human rights. In the early 90s, there was an active war there, and I, couldn't believe this was happening, and I didn't know anything about it till this moment. Decided to move there after college and lived in a squatters community of the indigenous, got burned out of a lot of villages there and fled to the city. And I was there for a year, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I spoke some Spanish, and there was a registered nurse named Barbara Fensky, who started an organization called UPAVIM, a women's organization in the squatters community, where they began, as a soy milk production. They began crafts. They tried to think of ways for the women to raise money for themselves. And there was so much trauma there. I mean, these are people that came from the villages, often didn't even speak Spanish, right? They spoke one of the many Mayan languages. And I think it was the first time I really saw depression, anxiety, trauma firsthand. And I was, so young, and I was living with them, and I was, trying to help in some way. And I felt in some way kind of helpless. I didn't know how to help the situation. And I was watching this nurse and doing her work. And I came back from that and decided to study nursing. So I thought, my mom was always so humble about nursing. She never talked about the sort of challenges of the job. And I really thought it was going to be, I sort of embarrassed to say this, but I thought I would just kind of pick up a nursing degree, that it would be this. And I was really, it really opened my eyes to, the depth of the practice of nursing, and in studying it, I gained so much respect for it and so much love for it. And I worked a little bit as an RM, but pretty much went right through to become an adult nurse practitioner. That was my first degree, while studying at the School of Public Health as well, and worked in primary care for years in New York City. And I found it that I always ended up talking to people about psych.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked in my big, most important jobs were really with the homeless population in New York City, an organization called Project Renewal. We worked on a med van and went sort of site to site to be their primary care providers. And I remember, people coming on who were, in a homeless situation, and they, I'm giving them blood pressure medication, but they're actively, suicidal or actively, psychotic or whatever it was. And I really felt like I didn't know what to do. And so I decided, you know what, I need to specialize more. Primary care felt too broad. And my interest was really psych. And so I went back to school at PACE to get a certificate as a PMHNP about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And from there started doing more, community mental health, worked again in Project Renewal in the shelter system for a while. And then worked in various places in the city. So that's how I went into psych. It took a while for me to get there. And it's just, as soon as I started the work as a psych NP, it just felt so right. And then the psychedelic part of it, I mean, I like many people, when I read Michael Pollan's book, it made me feel like, wow, this is actually something that I could become involved with. I interviewed with Journey Clinical, which is I'm sure many of you know Journey Clinical. It's a wonderful organization based on CAP and linking training therapists to do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. And I joined the medical team for Journey Clinical. So we were, meeting the patients, prescribing to them, had weekly medical team meetings, I still work with them. And I found that to be so exciting because it's a startup, right? And so we're sort of building this as we go. I was one of the earlier members of the medical team there about 3 or 4 years ago. And we met every week, and we had these hour-long meetings with providers as we were sort of growing into other states to really make sure our protocols were safe and tight, because people are doing the ketamine sessions with a therapist, right? So they're checking their own vitals, and there was a lot of sort of importance of keeping it medically safe. And then I heard about Spravato, and one of my frustrations with working in the field of ketamine was that it felt inaccessible to many, many people. And from my work in psych for years, access to good care was so important to me. And when I learned about Spravato, then I pivoted to Marpa much more full time, where I'm now, we're growing. It's wonderful, but just to have a form of ketamine that's covered by insurance has been a real game changer. And now, to Journey's, to just give them a shout out as well, they've really started enrolling in a lot of insurance plans too. So they're getting a lot of the cap covered. But that's sort of my overview. That's where I am now. I work a little bit for Journey. Still meet with the medical team, but most of my work is now at Marpa.
Okay. So how long have you been at Marpa?
We've been here about 2.5 years. I was the first clinician hired, and we were about to open a second clinic. We started 2 days a week, enough to give people those 2 sessions a week in the induction period. And then, and now we're open 5 days a week and every other Sunday. So it's super exciting to see this kind of interest and growth in Spravato. And it's a very special model. I mean, they and I, don't want to go too long into it now if there's other, but it's at some point, I think the model of Marpa is worth talking about, because we have integration guides on the team, which is very, special for a Spravato clinic because insurance doesn't want to pay for that. So the wonderful part of Marpa is that we have, Spravato accessible to all of these people that normally wouldn't have access. So it's been really a game changer in psych. I'm sure you've seen that too, Wendy. I mean, wow, to think about what I was doing 10 years ago, it's just.
Yeah, so for some of our people who haven't watched actually my interview and a few others, we talked about Spravato, so we could just review what is Spravato. So Spravato is the S-ketamine, which is the left-handed molecule of ketamine. Standard ketamine is kind of a blend of the two. Johnson & Johnson Janssen did a bunch of research, got it patented, and is covered by insurance, right? So it's a nasal spray, must be administered in the clinic. You have to stay for 2 hours. You have to get your vitals checked, and the prescriber has to be in the clinic, and it is covered by insurance for treatment-resistant depression. So if you failed between 2 and 4 other antidepressants, right, it gets covered. So I also work in the Spravato space, and also for the same reasons that it's covered by insurance accessibility. So tell me a little bit how Marpa does the Spravato.
So Marpa was founded, the founders of Marpa from the beginning, always expressed that the integration and additional support was very important to them, to have that, to offer that. And so what we have is a clinic in, about 30 minutes north of New York City, in White Plains. We have people coming up from the city, people coming up from the Bronx on, different like Medicaid transportation. We have people coming from the north. It's actually a wonderful spot because we're sort of in between. And we have 7 treatment rooms, often going simultaneously, 7 private rooms. And, the website of Marpa, focuses on how it's so, sort of a comfortable, I wouldn't say spa-like, but it does say that on the website. But, it depends what spas you've been to, right? If you're lucky enough to have that. But it's sort of, comfortable chairs, noise-canceling headphones that you can listen to, all sorts of ketamine playlists and eye shades. And, we really try to make every patient feel very special. But obviously we are a medical clinic, right? Our focus is patient safety and wellness. And we have 3 people on our team always. We have a provider like myself. We have a medical assistant who's wonderful. And then we have a team of integration specialists who have experience sitting with people in different medicine work. So they all come with very different backgrounds. Some of them are studying MSW, and we have one of them on site per shift. So it's a lot. It's 7 rooms, 6 to 7 rooms simultaneously going with, everyone having these sort of 2-hour expanded consciousness states, right? It feels active, it's busy, and integration. We're always sort of triaging which person needs that extra support that day. So integration goes in and often helps someone prep a little bit around the session, maybe coming up with an intention, maybe helping with some grounding exercises, things like that. Certainly in the middle, if the patient needed support, they would buzz. An integration guide would go in and sit with them for a little while until they felt safe and settled. And then at the end, the integration is happening, right, with this sort of like 15, 20-minute kind of touch base. Some patients choose it and love it. It becomes a very important part of their treatment here. And other patients, they don't. They're not necessarily interested, or maybe it takes them a little while to be interested. And we're always very clear that we are not offering therapy, and these are not therapists, right? That it's really more like deep conversations around the medicine and, helping to create a real sense of safety and connection. And, I think it is very, very special to have that option of meeting with integration. This is not, I think I already said this, Wendy, not covered. It's not something Marpa is getting reimbursed for as a service. So it's something that the founders decided it's worth, paying for this to to give the patients this extra support. It's a very heart open team, and we've been so fortunate that every person that's added to the team, we have this incredible connection with really just being open and having open hearts here, and it really trickles down, I think. The feeling over time as the patient is in treatment is really a sense of just love and respect. It's really very special. You can tell I really like my job, right? I hope you could tell. It's very, very wonderful. So
work, like, how are you staggering the dosing? Who's doing the dosing? Like actual spray, like administering the
yeah, so it's either I am or the medical assistant. Often I'm also doing evaluations of potential new patients. So sometimes I'll pop out and then be back, but I'm always right there. And it's been, a lot of the patients we see are referred from an inpatient stay. There are patients we see that have never, just don't take any antidepressants anymore because they've been unable to tolerate them, and nothing's really helped them. We see a lot of trauma. We see a lot of PTSD. Obviously, we're focusing on the treatment-resistant depression for the approval piece of it, but it's helping with, as a lot of other issues. The tricky part in the evaluations is really deciding who needs an outside therapist and who doesn't in this, because in an ideal world, right, we would have therapy here and we would, that would be part of it, but it's just not financially part of this model. So there's a lot of kind of the provider deciding, I think you're okay to start without having an outside therapist, but it's so important if you can add one. It's such a big part. It's synergistic with this medicine that, having Spravato without an outside therapist feels almost like a half treatment to me. But there are certain patients that we require them to have a therapist in place before they start, because I feel like they really need that, especially with trauma, that they really need that outside regular therapist to be sort of the anchor of their treatment. So it's a real range. I mean, we see people with active suicidal ideation, just coming from the hospital, to people who just feel like they just meet criteria for maybe moderate, depression. So it's a real range of acuity here.
Okay. Yeah, so at our clinic, I work at Mindful Health Solutions. We do the providers, so it's either nurse practitioner or psychiatrist. We get 30 minutes scheduled with the patient at the beginning. So we do a little bit of therapy, check-in, and then the dosing, which takes about 15 minutes to do the dosing itself, 12 to 15, right? 5 minutes between sprayers. Yes. So we just get the half an hour, but then the rest of the time they're with technicians who do the vitals and keep track of, how they're doing. If something major comes up, they will call us back.
Yes.
Usually we're with other patients. We don't have a scheduled integration kind of closing.
Yes, but you have a half an hour before you start the medicine every single session.
Yeah, so a half an hour while we're starting the medicine, yeah.
Yes.
Like half an hour every time with every patient.
Yeah.
All goes well. Sometimes, they're a few minutes late and then they're late getting the vitals and getting, but
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess they had found trying to do the ending integration for some patients didn't always work so well, or they found it was better to preload it because sometimes people are sort of nonverbal or not really able to put it together. But yeah, so at your clinic, are there other nurses or nurse practitioners?
Yes, we have Nathan Levitt, who I know was on at some point. I believe he met at some point he had an interview or a meeting with you. He's a FNP professor at Yale and very specialized in transgender medical work specifically, and became so focused on psych and seeing all the trauma and in that specific population that he ended up really becoming a specialist in psych. So he's here, one day a week. And then we just added a new provider, Courtney Lester, who's coming in from New York Presbyterian, the inpatient unit there. And where they're doing the inpatient unit at New York Presbyterian, they're administering IV ketamine on the unit, which is really interesting. So brings a lot of that experience in. And that's our team. We're pretty small, but it's bigger than we've ever been. So, but I really like the model where you said mindful health, right? Yeah, that's a wonderful model, is having that time and before, consistently with the provider every single time that's really special.
Yeah. So we just get the half an hour appointments every time. It's also our technicians are not medical assistants formally, or they can't administer the med, so the provider has to give the med.
Interesting.
Part of our,
Mm-hmm.
They're not. Yeah. They can do blood pressure, but not
Yes.
So you've been a nurse for a while, a nurse practitioner in psychiatry. How do you maybe worked other places? What do you think nurses bring to this work, especially to psychedelics? Nurses have sort of a different perspective, or what do you think? Why should we get nurses in this space?
I mean, I've just always marveled at look, there's wonderful doctors too. I have to watch myself here because I don't, but I've just marveled at the holistic approach of nurses always. And really being able to look at a whole person, look at them. And this is where, the softening of boundaries, I find in this work with psychedelic medicine, I really feel a softening of my traditional psych training. I use the word love a lot in this work. Not like I love you, ex-patient, right? Or I love, not in those terms, but in terms of just loving people and providing a sense of safety. And, when I think about nursing, I think about, obviously getting knowledge of the deep whole person, but also the sense of care and love that, we as human beings offer each other, I think is very unique to nursing. So, I feel so proud and happy to, be on a team that really is able to acknowledge, the heart, right? And how important that is in this work. And finally, for me to be at a point in my career where the boundaries are a little softer and we're super careful around them. We have touch consents. We have all these things in place, but it just feels like almost a relief to be able to be the kind of nurse that I've always wanted to be. So it's in that sense, I feel that's very unique to nursing.
Right. Yeah, I do really appreciate working with the Spravato. Yeah, I work as a nurse practitioner now and was prescribing and doing other things. But when they're in there for Spravato, then I do put a blanket on them or bring them water, kind of tuck them in, or get those little niceties that you learn as a nurse that really make such a difference. To their comfort as well as their safety. That's kind of the specialty of nurses. The little details.
Yes.
And kindnesses. Yeah.
It's really wonderful to be in that position. And I feel, I'm also on the sort of older side of everyone on the team. So I'm definitely patients coming in with these difficult childhoods and sort of, the boundaries are important to have, right? For sure. But, to be able to tuck a patient in, right, who's never even been tucked in, right, or hasn't had that kind of, care is I think it makes the treatment so much more meaningful to them, and they feel so safe. And to be able to be in that role is really incredible. And sometimes I get, hollered at in the middle of a session and realize, oh, this is not about me. I'm in the place of their mother right now. There's interesting things that come up in those sessions, that, I'll get pulled into a room and realize they're they're not mad at me, they're mad at their mother, you know, but I'm just kind of we're trying to always reframe and give them a sense of safety where maybe they've not ever felt safe in their own, you know, with their own childhood. So really good stuff.
Yeah. So our audience is primarily, right, nurses, nurse practitioners, nurse hopefuls, nursing students. So you have a nurse or nurse practitioner who's interested in working with psychedelics. What would you recommend they do? How do they get involved?
I think just, I think reaching out to another, you know, a nurse, a nurse practitioner, a registered nurse or nurse practitioner, someone in the field, and really just having almost conversations around it. I think, you know, the most important thing I've ever learned in my careers has always been with somewhat of a mentor that happened really organically, you know, like working on the Project Renewal van in New York City. You know, I kind of followed around this nurse practitioner and asked her a lot of questions. And I think I think providing not formal mentorships, but, you know, just being able to hop on a call and have a conversation with someone about how, you know, how as a nurse they can enter this field, and you know, really being available for conversations like that, I think is so important, because I haven't looked for work in this field in a little while. I've been so fortunate to have regular work in psychedelic medicine, but I think when I first looked, I felt a little bit at sea of where to start. And I remember I had an interview with Mind Bloom way back when, before I interviewed at Journey Clinical. I remember being asked about my own relationship with psychedelic medicine. I remember not knowing what to say, feeling like, is there a right or wrong answer here? And, you know, these sort of, so I think it's really, you know, important to have people you can bounce that off of, right, when entering this field.
Right. So do you think nurses need an advanced degree to work in psychedelics?
No.
No? Why not?
I really don't. Because, I mean, the prescribing part is fascinating to me. And I, you know, but I certainly think, you know, as a registered nurse, there's so much you can bring. I mean, I think about, Wendy, the wonderful DJ at Prati, my gosh,
Darren?
Darren. I mean, I think about Darren. Darren's a registered nurse, and the depth of his work, you know, that he's been able to do with psychedelic medicine and be a part of a team, right, that's doing such wonderful work. So absolutely not. I think, you know, that you do not need to have an advanced practice degree.
Right, because prescribing is only one part of it. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And it happens to be a part that I love, and I sort of geek out on that. And, you know, I love you know, we also offer intramuscular ketamine here at Marpa, and I really love the sort of art or, you know, / science of the dosing with that. But yes, I mean, I love the idea of RNs being in this work. I think they're crucial to this work. I wish we had an RN on the team, but it's, again, I'm not the you know, I'm not trying to you know, be the business owner. I'm not the business owner here, and I know that's not part of the model for Spravato. But you know, I think it's wonderful to have. I'd love to have an RN on the team.
Right. So we've mentioned Prati training, but what trainings do you recommend for nurses who are interested in this?
You know, I really think experiential training was huge for me. And even though I'd studied with Journey Clinical, I'm trying to remember the platform they used. It was an online Fluence. Is a sort of online training for therapists to learn ketamine-assisted psychotherapy, and also for the medical team to learn about CAP. And it was helpful. It was certainly a wonderful intro, and then we sort of built on it as a medical team in our meetings. But I worked in ketamine for 2 years before I had an experiential training, and having the opportunity to do that at Prati really changed a lot for me. And I spent probably the first, ketamine session just going through patients. Oh, this is how that patient was feeling. I just couldn't believe this medicine. And I couldn't, believe. And I had people say to me things like, you've never done this, you've never experienced, and sort of in disbelief that I was working in the field and hadn't experienced ketamine. And I always felt a little like, oh, but I describe it well, and I really listen to patients, and but once I was able to have experiential training, it really changed it a lot for me. It made my work, I feel, much deeper. And it just, the understanding of it just went like through the roof, right? I mean, I on such a different level. So, I had a couple different trainings with it. I mean, most of this has been really, on the job and working with patients and seeing them respond, but Prati changed a lot for me. It's hard to do though. I mean, these are, it's a wonderful training, but this is expensive. It's hard for people to actually make it work. I really wish there was a more affordable access to experiential training with ketamine.
Do you think it's experiential should be required or only suggested?
I think there's I'm going to say strongly recommend, right? Like, I do think that having psychedelic experience is really important. I think if someone has a deep interest in the medicine and is interested in training down the line, right, with experiential, I think that's also, a good way to get into the work. So no, I don't think it's required. I think it really depends on the person and their ability to really dig into the topic, really understand what the patients are experiencing. It's a funny thing to require, right? It feels a little.
Or if somebody has maybe a medical or indication, right?
Yeah.
Even if the financial burden is removed.
Yeah. Right. It feels a little uneasy for me, right, to make that as a requirement.
But it did change your practice, though, right? It changed.
It sure did. And so so again, but I was in the field for 2 years before I was able to actually make it happen. Whether it's financial or just time off work or. And I feel, grateful that I had those 2 years without, because it's part of the path, right? I mean, it just felt like so I went into the training probably with a different mindset because I had that experience for 2 years, and it really enabled me to deepen the work. So I think ideally everyone would have an experiential training, but I just feel like requiring it makes it too much of a barrier to enter the field.
Mm-hmm. Any other kinds of trainings you might recommend, or personal work or reading?
Yeah, I mean, for me, so much of this is about the people that I work with and the team that we're sort of always, talking about articles that have come out, right? There's a lot of back and forth on just making sure we're sort of staying up with what's come out. Wall Street Journal, did anyone see that one that just came out about that? Anyway, there was something that came out, I think, yesterday about a patient who died, they're with ketamine and Xanax, and it was really interesting. And those kind of things were, and obviously tragic, but it's all these things are learning, right, for us. And so I don't have something that I actively am doing for training. I probably should, but I just try to, I'm working a lot, and I try to do as much yoga as possible to sort of enable me to keep working at this pace. That's really what I can think of right now. Prati, no one does container like Prati. I just cannot get over that organization for training. Wow.
Really incredible. Yeah, I've gone to 2 of their trainings, their intro training and then the end of life training where I met you.
Yes.
They hold a tight container, and several of the lead trainers are RNs.
Yes, right. Christine's an RN, correct? Yeah. Yeah, it's really wonderful. But again, what a gift, right, to be able to do that. And so I think, it's a great question, Wendy. I mean, I do think, increasing access to these trainings is so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned yoga. So what other kind of, throw it on here, what kind of self-care do you do to keep you going, before and after sessions?
Yeah, we're able to have a lot of healthy food here for the team, which is nice, right? We're trying to bring in food at the beginning of the week so we can, because the provider is not, I do not leave the site for 10 or 11 hours, right? So it's sort of these long days, and so we're taking care of ourselves in that way, just by trying to nourish our body with good food. And but for me, I've found I've become somewhat obsessed with Bikram. I know it's not called Bikram anymore, but hot yoga, and it really started at the same time as this work for me. So I was never a person who did yoga. I thought it was okay, I just didn't. But it's almost as though this work almost requires that. It feels like completely intertwined with it, because in the yoga is where I'm solving problems. I'm meditating. I'm sort of prepping. So it's almost like the more I work, because there's a lot of work here. We're very busy, which is a wonderful thing to be this busy. And the more I work, the more yoga I do, the more I can work. So it's shown me that more than any other hobby or sort of self-care that I've ever done. So that's really, that's really my focus. And then, I still have a kid at home and, a couple of kids in college. And so I have family things that also are very grounding and exciting and challenging and all of that. But really, for my self-care, it's really yoga.
Okay.
Who's that in the background?
The cat. He's not.
Cutie.
So yeah. So let's see.
And live music and dancing.
Okay. So like physical movement, right? Processing, moving meditation type
For
thing.
sure.
Yeah, to help kind of move that energy through.
Absolutely.
So what kind of role do you see nurses taking in psychedelics? Like, can you see nurses getting involved in advocacy? Like, it can help change laws or harm reduction or other ways?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I love the role of harm reduction in this work. I identify most with that. I'm not the best at looking at the bigger picture of nursing, and advocacy on larger levels. It's not really my strong suit. I'm much more of kind of like person to person, put my head down and kind of go in room to room to room. And that's why I think this work, especially in this world, that's so chaotic right now, that it feels grounding for me, to be able to focus so much on the individuals and the individual care. I think that I'm so, grateful for the people that are out there doing the larger advocacy of expanding the role of nursing. I'm not sure how I'll add to that yet. I would like to, and I'm open to, if somebody pulled me in, I would, but it's a busy gig here, and so I'm very focused on sort of the patient to patient right now. I do, really try to practice a harm reduction model here, especially with people, struggling with wanting to cut back on substances. I really try to pull them in when I can for treatment and just be very open about how this actually can help in their efforts, and not be, super rigid on people who are, using a substance and wanting to cut back, right? I mean, we have our criteria, we're careful around the criteria, but just approaching them with a model that's not judgment at all and meeting them where they're at, which is a little challenging with Spravato because the criteria are very rigid, but I really try, at least in attitude, to focus on that.
Right. Huh. So we have a couple questions here from the audience. Let's see. There we go. This is from Andy. 100% agree with the necessity of the holistic approach that nurses bring to the table. Which psychedelics have you worked with, and what disorders are you working on treating just with the psychedelics?
Great. Thanks, Andy. So thanks for the supportive comment too. I do stick with ketamine because of the legal status here in New York State. So as far as my, professional work, that's the psychedelic that I work with. I think that as far as the disorder, and it can be tricky. I mean, we definitely have patients ask us questions about psilocybin, boy, do I want to give them an answer and help and guide them in this and give them resources, but just from a liability standpoint, we don't do that. And so we basically say, this is the medicine that we're sticking with for now. If you want to go somewhere where it's legal, that's, your, obviously your choice. And we try to be supportive around it, but we're just a little careful around that. And diagnosis wise, I mean, we're seeing a big range. Everyone has some level of depression that's coming in for Spravato treatment because they have to meet criteria for treatment-resistant depression, which, Wendy already mentioned, right? Trying 2 or more antidepressants is still having some level of depression. But along with that, right, there's a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD. We see eating disorders, OCD, and, certainly intense grief, as well, that I find the medicine's been very, very helpful for people in a grief process. And we do, there are some patients with bipolar disorder, we move into that with extreme caution, always collaborating with their outside primary psychiatric provider, especially when they have bipolar disorder. Always making sure, there's criteria that they haven't had a manic episode in a certain amount of time. But when someone's really stuck down in that depressive part of a bipolar disorder, the medicine can be so helpful to lift them, just enough out of it without pushing them into mania. So there's always this kind of, careful dance around that we're doing. So,
Auto, or is that with the intramuscular ketamine for bipolar? Are you getting coverage for bipolar from Spravato?
Yeah, I mean, if they have, really they're really in the depressive episode of it, we have been able to get it covered as long as we can show that they're stable, on as far as the mania for quite some time. So, we've had some success getting it covered. It's more rare. We've also had it rejected as well. But I found that it's been really, really helpful, and we're very cautious around it. We might adjust the protocol a little less frequent, or, perhaps stick to the lower dose as we're sort of watching them very carefully. But we've had some people say they've never felt more stable than when they're doing this medicine. With the intramuscular, I mean, the criteria are less, right, stringent. So it's but generally the intramuscular is with patients who have been taking Spravato for quite some time, and maybe want to try a different approach to ketamine. So that's more who we're not pulling in so many new intramuscular patients. We're very focused on Spravato here.
Okay. Let's see, do we have another?
And anxiety. I mean, anxiety is a massive one too, that we see so much anxiety, and it's, it's been really effective. There are some patients that I find have a little increase when they start, maybe, especially if they're anxious about the actual medicine. So somebody who has a real, strong anxiety issue, we tend to really spend a lot. It feels like we really spend more time with them in a way, preparing them. And
let's see. We have another question. Next we could do. Oh, okay. So this one from Laura. So what kinds of results have you seen after a single treatment with patients who come from the hospital or actively suicidal?
After a single treatment,
or several.
Yeah, I mean, or several, but there's a lot of managing expectations, and I'm sure, Wendy, that you do this as well, where that in the evaluation, I really try to focus on, it can take the first 4 weeks before you really feel a substantial shift in your mood or in the suicidal ideation. Often we try not to really judge the results for the first 7 or until the 7th or 8th session. But that said, I think there are a handful of patients that respond immediately. And I always say, hopefully that'll be you, right? But trying to sort of let them know that that's unusual, right?
Mm-hmm.
In reality, I see it a lot where somebody will come in and just feel such a relief to have a shift in their consciousness, even if it's for an hour, right? That it feels like such a relief to them that they can feel another way, that then this sort of sense of hope is created even from a single session, right? I mean, I try not to play it up too much, but it's truly how I feel and what I observe, that, even from a single session, that they could have these moments of relief, which then gives them hope that maybe I can actually feel this way day to day. And so we often see, especially someone out of the hospital with SI, that we see them respond almost quicker than other patients.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the other indication, right, for Spravato. So it's resistant depression or kind of like active, like suicidal thoughts, I think it is.
Yeah.
I have seen, the similar things where that they may feel amazing for for an hour or two. They can feel kind of hope. Yeah. Patients report that they'll hear like kind of a mantra in their head that like, you can get through this, or maybe everything's okay. Like there's that little maybe we're okay feeling. So I try to ground people into sort of I'm somatically trained in therapy. So yeah, that feeling, that okayness in your body, and see if you can kind of bookmark it and return to it. Like, wow, you felt this moment of peace, stuff expanded for a moment before the walls closed back in.
Yes.
You can kind of cultivate that over several sessions.
Yes. And so therefore, right, it's evidence that it's there inside of you. And I think of this medicine so much as an opening medication, that it sort of opens up in some ways what's already there, whether it's been covered, opening up someone's intuition, all the time, right? If anyone ever says anything about, me being a healer, I'm like, no, like you are the healer. You are the healer of you. There's nobody. You're the healer. You're the one in that role. And I just love always switching that to them. And, I know that's very, common approach in this work. And it's really, I think that people really feel, building the trust with their intuition. I think that gets so covered in depression specifically, but many other things. So that part of it, I really think is, key, right, to approach it like that, at least for me.
Yeah, teaching them how to trust themselves again.
Yes.
Or maybe for the first time, right? Trust their
yes.
intuition, which. So psychedelics are now all over the news, right? There was an article yesterday, right? What kind of, pros and cons of that? But there's a lot of. Do you see any perils with mainstreaming of psychedelics?
I'm sorry, someone's knocking on my door. Give me 1 second. Forgive me, I'm in the office very late tonight, so people are wondering if if somebody was still here. Yes, I'm here.
Okay. So yeah, what parallels do you see with the mainstreaming of psychedelics?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's just so interesting that you're asking this. And we were just talking about this article that came out about, people really doing the medicine without supervision, and not to throw any company under the bus or anything like that. But, there's, to me, the perils are really, people having these experiences that are not prepared, or have a diagnosis that puts them at risk, right, of becoming really sicker in some ways and more acute. And so I'm concerned about protocols and training, right? And it's so interesting to work for really a startup where we're building the protocols as we go, and this is also new, and we're constantly adjusting and changing things as we go to make sure that the safety is priority. So my concern is really patient safety. That and again, I think at home companies, there can be some wonderful things about that. There's value in that, I think, for the right situation. But I really like the support around this medicine that a place like a Spravato clinic can give. It sounds like your clinic does, and our clinic does. And so to me, that's the main, I have a real concern about that. Just growing so fast, right? Growing, so fast that really there's not thoughtful protocols in place that keep people safe.
Right. Or do you get people coming in with really high expectations, where they heard that psychedelics can cure everything? And
oh yeah, like this is my I get a lot of this is my last hope, right? If this doesn't work, I whenever I hear that, I go, okay, and we have a big conversation about expectations. And I mean, I love, like, to me, my favorite thing is when someone comes in for treatment one and they say, how you feeling? And they say, I'm a little nervous, but I'm hopeful. And I'm like, yes, because it's, of course, they're a little nervous, never experiencing medicine. We get a lot of people who've had no psychedelic experience, no ketamine experience. I mean, really, maybe they never use cannabis, or, they're really not in any kind of change of consciousness state. And so to be able to witness that for the first time is really special. And I think the expectations, especially from social media, where, you see all these things about Spravato changing their lives. And so, that's definitely something I see a lot, is this is my last hope. Do you?
So I do, yeah. Sometimes we also at our clinic offer TMS, transcranial.
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
That's sort of the two main interventions we have that are meds for treatment-resistant depression. So sometimes switch and we'll do TMS. Occasionally we can get insurance to cover TMS and esketamine at the same time.
Oh, good. That's great.
And whether there's a synergy there, we're collecting data. We don't have enough yet because it's rare that we can do it. Is there an increased neuroplasticity from both together that can help with the shifts? But yeah, I do want to always caution patients that, right, this is not necessarily going to fix everything, but it's certainly worth a try. You've tried the other things. Let's give this a shot.
Yes. For sure. That's a wonderful combination. Wow. I want to come visit your clinic. It sounds so cool.
San Francisco, yeah. Okay, so this is kind of our traditional question we like to ask everyone at the end here. So yeah, if you could go back and give your younger self a bit of advice, what would it be?
I think that I would give, myself the advice of being, basically, I'm so sorry, one second. It's 9:30 in New York, so the team that cleans the office is telling me something, so forgive me. I mean, I think for me, I was sort of reflecting a little bit about my urge to, or thought that I could control things as a younger self. And I remember one time, fairly recently, a patient said to me, the only thing that we can control is where we put our attention. And that struck me so deeply, because to me, it's true, right? So where in a difficult situation, where am I putting my attention in an intentional, purposeful way? Because everything is changing all the time, right? I can't control that. And so I do feel like as a younger person, I think that would have helped me a lot to have more of more of an ability to kind of realize that. I think it would have helped sort of calm me and help me get through more challenging things growing up, especially in my 20s, right? I mean, your 20s is hard. You're making a lot of decisions about your life, and I think yoga has helped me with that a lot. I think this work has helped me with that a lot. I still have many things that I work on internally, and I often think about that almost like a mantra for myself, that in this chaotic situation, in this chaotic world, right, where am I putting my attention that serves the people I love, that serves the people around me, that serves myself? Like, what am I focusing on? It helps almost calm me a little bit in situations. And so I think I would have given that to myself as a younger person. I think that would have helped me through a lot.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you have that perspective now, at least. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on it. It's a work in progress, right?
Sharing it here, and we can,
yeah,
all helping each other move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, thanks so much. Is there anything else you want to say to the nurses out there, or?
I mean, I just like to say this is a super exciting time in the world, and the fact that we are working in a field where the stigma is being broken with these medicines. They're legitimized. It to me, it's so exciting, and I'm here if anyone ever wants to talk about Spravato or anything, right? I mean, I'm Amy at marpaminds.com. And because I really believe in this community, and that's, what you're doing at Open Nurses, Wendy, is really, it's so inspiring. So really beautiful to bring people together like this. So thank you for doing it. And thank you for giving me a chance to talk. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And for those of you tuning in, we have a special extra interview this month. We'll have another one next week. I'm going to be interviewing Catherine Tucker, she's a lawyer. I think it's our first lawyer we've interviewed.
Oh, that's a wise thing to do.
End of life rights attorney. And she's helping to kind of sue the Oregon Health Administration there. They have the psilocybin facilitators, but they want to, you have to do it in a center, in a psilocybin center. On end of life, sometimes patients cannot come to a center. We want to be able to have home use of psilocybin, regulated, home use with a practitioner. So I'll be interviewing a lawyer next week. So people in the end of life interest, ways for nurses to get involved and maybe even help testify towards that.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Great, right. Wendy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And all right, everyone, take care, and we'll see you again. Bye.